All right, today I want to welcome Kandas Rodarte. Kandas is a digital marketing pioneer, podcast host, and accountability coach. She launched a trailblazing custom furniture e-commerce website in 1999. Wow, that goes back far. A YouTube talk show in 2012, and her long-running podcast in 2014. The thing that stands out to me, this was all at the beginning of things. So not a follower, definitely a leader, but there's more. Living with metastatic breast cancer is her why. It drives Kandas to get things done, inspires her to encourage others to do the same. Life is too short to waste. Kandas, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, and just so everybody knows, I was on your podcast. Now you're coming on mine. It's such a delight to have you here. And something I obviously didn't learn when I was on your podcast, apparently you learned 3 lessons from a Nazi soldier.
Well, yeah, that doesn't come up very often when I'm interviewing somebody else. It is a lifelong lesson, though. It happened when I was 19, possibly 19, 20-ish. I drove a sporty Volkswagen Rabbit convertible. I had saved my money to buy this cute little sports car. It was my first car that I purchased myself. And it was 10 years old when I purchased it. So, it was a 1980 Volkswagen Rabbit convertible. So it was 1990 because I was 10 years old when I bought it. And I subsequently got this job working for the North Face up in Berkeley, California. And I had lived in this little tiny town called Castroville, California. So it was a 90-minute drive to go home to see my parents, which is where they still lived. So I quickly learned that a 20-year-old woman in the Bay Area has a slim to none chance in the year 1990 of getting decent auto mechanic service in the year 1990, right? I'm sure things have changed since then. But after being, pardon the expression, screwed over multiple times by different mechanics in the Bay Area, I went back home to Hans, my mechanic that had been working on my car up until the time that I had moved away to the Bay Area. So Hans was in his late 60s, gray-haired man, heavy set, very tall, very charming, the most wonderful man in the world. Everybody was his friend. He offered fair prices, and he always went above and beyond. So one of the things that stood out about him is, here I am, this 20-year-old kid, right? 21-year-old kid at that point. And he treated me with the utmost respect. He always took the time to have a conversation with me and to catch up with me and find out what was going on in my life. And he was genuinely interested in what I had to say. And this one time, 10-year-old cars, things start to fall off. This one time, the handle, remember when you had to use a crank to roll down your window?
There's people that have no idea what a Volkswagen Rabbit is.
I know. And it was a convertible too, so it was very rare. I always like to do things that are a little bit different than other people. So the crank on the window on the driver's side fell off. And so there was no way for me to roll the window up and down. And I picked up my car and he had replaced the crank, right? And he just always did things that were he just went above and beyond. Like your car was always cleaner when you picked it up than it was when you dropped it off. And he just was this incredible person. So one day we are standing outside. He's done with my car. I've paid him. He's handed over the keys, and we're having one of those famous Hans conversations where he's catching up on where I am in my life. And he's leaning against the hood of my car, and I've got my hand on the car as well. And we're having a conversation. I mean, I can still see it so clearly in my head. And he tells me about how he had been a Nazi soldier. And his whole body slumps. He just leans forward. He looks down at the ground, and with shame written all over his body, he says, "I loved that son of a bitch." He was so ashamed of how much he had admired and believed in this fascist who had nearly destroyed the planet, right? Who had killed millions of people. He was so ashamed. But here he is, all those years later, 40 years later, standing there with a 20-year-old Asian American in a town in Central California that is agricultural in nature. He is probably one of the only white guys who actually lives in that town. And he is kind, he is generous, and he cares deeply about the people around him. Pillar of his community.
Right.
So I learned 3 lessons from Hans that day that I have carried with me forever. And as many people as I can tell the story to, I tell. So thank you for letting me share it with your audience. So the first lesson is, dude, just be kind, right? Be nice. Be nice. The second lesson was to go above and beyond. And so at the time, I was an inside sales rep for the North Face, and I took the be kind and go above and beyond lesson, and I inserted it into my career at the North Face, and I became the #1 producer for inside sales in that company. I mean, I was pushing out millions of dollars of inventory every week, right? Because I learned from Hans how to be kind and how to go above and beyond. And the third lesson is a lesson that it's hard to hear, but sometimes you've got to be careful about who you place your belief in. And so he gave me a little bit of skepticism to go along with the kindness there. It was, thank you. Every time, even though it's been 30 years or so since I learned that lesson, it still chokes me up a little bit to think about him and the huge difference that he made in my life.
It's a powerful lesson, and it's, I think part of that lesson is we are all imperfect people, and imperfect people that have made bad choices still have powerful things that they can share with others, through the brokenness.
Mm-hmm.
And, and here it's touched you, 30 years later.
I think the big part there is that he healed past the grave error, right? I mean, that could have broken him.
Yeah.
And it turned him into a better person.
Well, that's great. And I'm not sure it's easier for women to take their cars to repair shops anymore. When I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, I had my wife drop a car off at Firestone, where I usually got my car worked on, and she called me up and said, "Hey, they want to do this and this, and they're charging this." And I'm like, that seems high. And so I call the Firestone, and I said, "Okay, tell me what needs to happen on this car." And they're like, "Well, this needs to happen, and then we have to do this other thing." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. For you to do it," and one was, they were charging me to replace a belt. They were basically removing 2 things in the same part of the engine. And I said, "You're charging me double labor for the same thing." Well, yeah. And I said, "Now I'm smart enough to know that, so you're not doing that to me, but I sent my wife into your store. And what you're telling me is I can't trust you with my wife."
Mm-hmm.
And I never went back to them again.
Mm-hmm.
But this is back, here you have this wonderful story about a mechanic that treated you right.
Mm-hmm.
As you were talking, I was like, maybe that's the business I need to go in. It's so easy to outperform so many people.
Mm-hmm.
Is go in and be an honest mechanic that doesn't take advantage of people.
Yeah. Like, my favorite place to get my oil changed back when I lived in Texas was a Valvoline that was owned by a woman. And she was there every day doing the work. And the reason why I liked going there, it wasn't just because she was owned by a woman, is because it was, you just felt like you were being treated fairly.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, when you find the right one, you stick with them.
Yeah. Wow.
That's a lesson that goes beyond mechanics.
It does. Well, thanks for sharing that story. Now, you and your husband had a business called Shane Rodarte Furniture Maker, and this was the online business that you started in 99.
99. Yeah, it's crazy. This is a crazy story. So my husband and I got married in April of 1998, and we launched the business in June of 1998, about a week after we found out we were pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So my husband and I have never been anything but business partners and parents. with the exception of 2 months. We had 2 months of being newlyweds, and then we went straight into being business partners / parents. But yeah, we met on the internet. So it was really, we were like, why don't we just try doing this is a new thing. Let's try and see what happens if we put the business on the internet. And at that time, most folks were only using America Online to log in, like America Online, like You've Got Mail. That was the only way you could get online. And we were like, America Online is just part of the internet. It's part of the world. I think we called it the World Wide Web back then. It's just part of the World Wide Web. I really think we should not do our website on America Online. I think we should actually do it on the actual World Wide Web. We should find a hosting service off of the AOL platform. And so we built a website, and the first one was a disaster because we didn't use the right host. So then we had to start from scratch. So about 1999, we launched what became Shane Rodarte Furniture Maker. And within a few weeks, we got our first order. And by 2004, we decided to do wholesale because of my experience with the North Face, I knew wholesale inside and out, and I didn't know retail as well. So we decided to do wholesale. So we found 40 dealers in 25 states to carry our furniture by 2004. And by 2008 hit, it became very evident by the end of 2008 that we could not sell wholesale anymore and sustain our 6 employees and all that. So we pivoted and we stopped selling wholesale. We actually tripled our prices and we changed the way that we marketed. And because we did that, we survived until 2017 when we were just like, we're done. It's time to retire. So we retired in 2017. That's the short version of a very long story.
Now, when you say you tripled your prices, there's some people that are listening that think you went from IKEA prices to 3 times IKEA prices.
Not really, but okay.
Yeah. So I mean, help people understand the type of furniture that you were making.
So to be perfectly honest, wholesale pricing for furniture is about 60% less than you're paying for it at retail. So if you go into a furniture store and you pay $1,000 for something, the store paid $400 for it.
Okay. But so I have a dining table that I paid. It's a semi-custom dining table, paid $2,800 for it. Is that where you were pricing, or
you were direct to that? You purchased it from a maker that was direct to consumer, correct?
Yeah.
So there wasn't a wholesale aspect to it. We had priced so that we could mass produce with 6 employees and push out product 3 to 4 orders per week on pallets to furniture stores, to gift shops around the country. So we were priced at wholesale level. All right. With pushing out lots of inventory every week.
Wow.
Okay. Different beast. Yeah. By tripling our prices, it also meant that we slowed down production and we improved quality. And we didn't just charge 3 times for the same product, although they looked the same, we were taking our time a little bit better because the person that we were shipping it to was the actual person that was going to be sleeping on it. So different animal, but a $2,800 custom table, you got a really good deal on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. My wife, when 2 years ago, when I was in the hospital and my wife was thinking I was a goner, she's like, I'm definitely keeping that table in the family. And, which she should. It's an heirloom piece.
That's the beauty of custom pieces, even semi-custom. I mean, that's what we produced as well as semi-custom pieces. Here's your menu to choose from, and here are the add-ons that you can add to it. But semi-custom could mean anything. I mean, we did all sorts of things to change the look. So we never made the same bed twice. But when it's a custom piece that you have designed yourself and it's a classic enough design, 300 years from now, Antique Roadshow is going to still be around because humans like stuff like that. And someone's going to look at this piece and say, oh, and they're going to tell the story about how it was their great grandfathers who survived the pandemic of 2020, and the story, the whole story that goes on with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so you changed from doing wholesale to customers, to
Direct to consumer. Yeah.
direct to consumer. Why'd you make that change?
Because wholesale wasn't going to sustain itself in that economy. It just, the stores weren't getting the foot traffic at all. And so they weren't ordering. And we had these 6 employees. We couldn't keep them all. We ended up having to let some of them go. But we couldn't keep them busy if we weren't getting the orders from the stores. So the smart thing to do so that we could keep the dollars in our, the income coming in, was to say, okay, well, who is actually still buying? And it was the folks that could afford, the custom pieces. And so by pivoting, I meant that we laid out a custom, with the wholesale stores, we gave them limited options. We expanded on that for the custom options. And we just said, okay, now where are they hanging out? And we went to where they were hanging out. Something also very lucky happened for us. And I'm going to say lucky, but luck is you make your own luck. In 2009-ish, Elle Decor did a spread on a couple of fashion designers named Badgley and Mishka. And they had one of our beds in their Kentucky farm. And so after that Elle Decor spread came out, that bed became our #1 bestseller. So we sold that bed from that magazine spread for the next 9 years.
Wow.
Consistently, time and time again. And usually in the same color.
Yeah. And just, remove any confusion. All this happened. The thing that caused the change, it was the middle of the Great Recession.
Mm-hmm.
The economy changed. You
Mm-hmm.
needed to take the skills that you had and redirect them for what the economy was doing then.
Mm-hmm. So we had to do what needed to be done to attract somebody like Mark Badgley to find our website and say, oh, I like that bed. Let me order it from my horse ranch, right? My Kentucky ranch. And then all the pieces had to line up. So it wasn't just luck that Elle Decor featured this bed on their website and in their magazine on the front page of an article, right? It wasn't that wasn't the catalyst. The catalyst was we need to attract people like Mark Badgley, right? That's who we need to attract. So we did the work to attract Mark Badgley so that he would purchase the bed.
Yeah. And that's so critical. I mean, I hear success story after success story of somebody saying, where do my ideal customers hang out? Who do my ideal customers admire?
Mm-hmm.
Let me figure out how to reach them.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, there's some people that are really struggling right now. I mean, I guess officially we're not in recession, or there's some debate about that. But
I think it's in the eye of the beholder right now.
Yeah. Well, I think there's agreement that it's right now, things have changed. It used to be a lot easier to sell than it is now.
That's true.
So what advice would you give to business owners as they're facing this current economy?
It really is about, where are your customers hanging out? That is so true. And I recently had an epiphany that my coaching clients are hanging out on Facebook, even though I wanted to be on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to be on LinkedIn, but my clients were on Facebook. So I had to pivot to Facebook, and then I had to figure out Facebook all over again because it'd been a few years since I had interacted on Facebook. Then I get this little email or little message from Facebook that says I'm a rising creator, and I got it 2 weeks in a row, and I'm like, what does that mean? What do you mean I'm a rising creator? It just means that I figured out Facebook, right? So I figured out Facebook, and as soon as I pivoted, I picked up like 3 clients. As soon as I pivoted to Facebook, it's like, oh, I guess I should have been paying more attention here. So know where your clients hang out, right? And a lot of people are going to tell you, well, LinkedIn is where the people hang out that have, the $150,000 a year is the average income of a LinkedIn user, and $35,000 a year. These numbers are made up. $35,000 a year is the average income of a Facebook user. So, of course, people want to hang out on LinkedIn, but if that's not where the people who are actually going to buy from you are hanging out, then you need to hang out where they're hanging out. And with back in the day in 2009, 2008, it was Google, right? We were really on purpose about SEO. If we paid for advertising, we were super narrow with the niche that we targeted with our pay-per-click ads. I mean, we were just really targeted and did a lot of research in keywords. And keywords are still a thing now, but it's more like hashtags, I think. You still need to be in the top 10 on Google. Don't give up on Google. You still need to be in the top 10, but you don't forget about social media.
I've been reading Google rolled out a new algorithm update called the helpful content. And there's people lost like 80% of their traffic overnight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And John Mueller from Google is responding to a lot of these people on Twitter. And the message is basically, what made you think AI written content was unique and original?
Yeah.
There was this big move. Everybody's like, oh, AI is going to be our blog writer. And
Mm-hmm.
they started churning out all these blogs. And in fairness, I was at a conference a year ago when Google said, well, yeah, we're not going to penalize people for AI generated content. And people heard that and they just went off like mad, but they missed the bigger picture of Google said for decades, we want to rank original and creative, content that is impactful and meaningful.
Yeah.
And guess what? When AI is copying everything on the internet, it's hard to do that.
Yeah. So be unique, take advantage of long tail keywords. It's a thing. A long tail keyword has more than 3 words.
Yeah.
And just be really targeted. I had this goal at the beginning of the year that I was going to write 365 blog posts because I'd never done it. And so I thought this is a great goal. And then I realized how unrealistic that was. So I said, okay, I'll just do 5 posts a week. Monday, I'll blog 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And then I realized, oh my gosh, that is not sustainable. But here's the thing with Google, right? Because you're writing blog posts for Google. Google wants fresh content. I have 3 blog posts on my blog. I started in 2011-ish, I think, 2012 maybe. And I have 3 articles from the 10 plus years that I've been blogging. All of them are really old, and all 3 of them are about breast cancer. And my blog is about relationship marketing.
Wow.
So Google's going to do what Google's going to do.
Yeah.
And I just have to be strategic about making sure those 3 articles that Google loves are up to date and fresh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, let me ask you this. So obviously, going through 08 and 09, you had to pivot, a lot of challenges. You've built and retired from a business. Now you're building something else. Has there been a moment, is there one moment that really stands out, kind of a white knuckled moment where you feel like your leadership was put to the test? You had to do something. It was scary. You weren't sure how it was going to work out. What happened and how did it work out?
I'm going to try to tell a story without it being catty, because it could be catty. But we found out, this was when we were still selling wholesale. We found out that our number 1 client didn't like me. Like, they loved the furniture and they loved my husband, but they didn't like me. And I was the interface, right? I'm the person that they, and I get, no, but I'm not saying everybody has to love me, because that's ridiculous, right? I have a very unique personality, right? But it was difficult because they were our number 1 client, but they were also our number 1 time suck. And we had to discount for them. I mean, they just were not worth. They weren't worth the income that we received for them, even though they were the highest income. It wasn't worth the amount of time and effort that we put into it for somebody who didn't like me, right? Mm-hmm. And so my husband made the decision. He called the store and said, we're not going to build for you anymore. And so our gross income went down significantly, like by 35%. They were that big of a client, but our net income increased.
Wow.
So the white knuckle moment, okay, are we going to be able to survive firing this customer, was like we were so glad we did it because we were making more money because we didn't have to deal with the BS of having to make that customer happy. Right. And she went on, that store went on to get, to buy furniture from other places. And it was all great for her. And it was great for us. Right.
Well, and I think that's so powerful is I know when we've had bad clients, when I look at the amount of time that's non-productive time that's not benefiting me, time that's not benefiting them, it's just enormous.
Yeah.
And what being able to take that time and apply it to people that you work best with, people that like you, people that you like, people that you can genuinely help, everybody benefits.
Yeah. And the amount of time that we were spending on that one client could then get spread out to the 39 other clients that we had all over the country.
Yeah.
That we could just be, just have just a little bit, spend a little longer on the phone with them, get to know them just a little bit better. Wow. That was back in the day when people actually called to place their orders. Do you remember that, Craig? Do you remember people calling to place an order?
I'm still sort of stuck there, but yeah, I like doing business with people.
Yeah.
So
you got to get really good at now these days. You got to get really good at being genuine and yourself in a text message or an Instagram or a DM, a Facebook DM or an Instagram DM, because that's where the future is. But yeah, if you can get on Zoom, I don't like talking on the phone, but I want to, if somebody wants to talk to me and we're texting back and forth on, DMing each other back and forth, I'm like, can we video? This would be a lot easier if we just hopped on video. And now, I mean, you can just hop on video on Facebook Messenger in 3 seconds. So it makes that conversing a lot easier and more personable. And if you're on video, you can see each other's faces and read expressions and body language. And it's a lot nicer. Use that video chat feature. If you're at the point where you're DMing and texting, use video chat. It's really good.
That's a great tip right there. That is a great tip. Well, Kandas, this has just been a delightful conversation. Host of the Gratitude Geek, you should listen to the show. And how do folks reach you?
Go to gratitudegeek.com. Everything you need to reach me is there.
All right.
Yeah. And I'm coming up on 10 years, Craig. 10 years.
It's amazing. I mean, how many episodes do you have out?
I just released 188. I did take a little break in between for breast cancer. I just released 188, but I've got some really good stuff coming up down the pike. And I've interviewed the director at the Vatican Observatory, and I've interviewed the founder of Business Network International, BNI. So I've got some, and I've interviewed Craig Andrews. So yeah, there's some really good content on that podcast, Gratitude Geek.
All right. Well, definitely tune into the Gratitude Geek. Kandas, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.